lovely people. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Raven Days. Today's video is going to be discussing a question that I get semi-frequently, not super frequently by people who have only seen my stuff here or maybe like on Instagram, but if you have seen some more of my up-close content, I do get this question because you can see my face up close. So if you didn't know, I have makeup on, but I have a line right here. That is a scar. I've had facial reconstructive surgery. What? You said you're all natural. Well, I guess if you count emergency facial reconstruction surgery, then no. But I looked like this minus the scar before, so there hasn't been anything else added. The story behind this is, for a really long time, I have worked with animals, and at a certain point in my career, I was a vet tech, which if you don't know what a vet tech is, think of like a nurse for dogs. And specifically, I am kind of tall. I'm like 5'7.5". Don't laugh at me if you don't think that's tall. I think that's tall for a girl. 5'7.5", 5'8", and I was one of the taller people at the vet office that I worked at. And so I was in charge of handling some more aggressive dogs. When they would come in, I was stronger, I was taller, I could get my arms around a lab, a boxer, whatever, a little bit easier than some of the other techs could who were shorter. And so for that reason, I tended to get some larger dogs, and for the most part, larger dogs tended to be the ones with some aggression issues. On the certain day that I received this scar, I remember it like it was yesterday. It's hyper vivid in my mind. But basically what happened is the computer system that we had at the vet place notified you if there was a bite history on a dog. And so a bite history means that sometime in the past that dog has either tried to bite or has bitten a vet tech at the facility or the owner or whatever. So it's marked in the system so that you're extra careful, basically. Now, on the day that this incident occurred, I pulled this dog's chart up and it did not flag as a bite history. And for whatever reason, it was some kind of oversight within the computer system that it had been so long since that data was inputted that it basically like unmarked the animal. And so I have no idea if the facility where I worked at changed their recording system after I left. I don't think so, because I think that it was partially invented by the owner. But that was a huge oversight that ended up costing me very, very much so. I went in as I normally did. I weighed the dog. I got talking with the family. I got brief medical history, everything going off with the dog, whatever they needed for the day. And then I went and grabbed my vet and the vet I was working with that day. And so for this, like the privacy of these people, I'm not going to mention where, who, any of that stuff, but I will say my vet was very short. She was a very short woman. She was like maybe 4'11". And so she absolutely needed somebody who was taller and stronger to hold the dog. And so I did a normal hold on the dog, which is I'm going to go underneath their chest and I'm going to hold their shoulder right here. And then my other arm is going to go around. That is the hold that I was going to do on that animal. It was not any kind of special hold or anything like that. But before we even got to that point, I was sitting on the floor and I was sitting on my knees, so kind of like this, and I had my arms to my sides and my hands, my palms up. And so I am fear-free certified, which means that when working with animals, I am very careful and I understand and know how to read their body language. After that job, I worked with behavioral animals, meaning animals that had behavioral issues, for a long time. But whenever you are dealing with a dog that has either fear aggression or is just aggressive in general, you want to be really careful with them. But when you're fear-free and you're a fear-free certified facility, you do that with every single animal regardless, just to be safe, to make sure that they feel comfortable around you. And so, of course, I'm sitting there, palms up, knees on the ground, and this is what I remember. I remember giving the dog treats. I remember looking to my left, or I'm sorry, my right, at my vet tech, and the only people in the room was the owner, the owner's daughter, the vet, and me. And so I remember looking at my vet, saying something. I had just given the dog a treat. I remember looking back at the dog, and I remember taking my knees and raising up. So I did not stand up. I did not even really go towards the dog. I just raised up a little bit. And this dog, within a half a second, I remember very little, but of the exact moment, but I remember feeling the dog on me, and then I put my forearm into the dog's chest and I pushed, and that inadvertently did cause a little bit more damage than if I would have let the dog release on its own, but that was I'm sure, survival instinct to get the dog off me as quickly as possible. And so I did that. I don't think the owner or the owner's daughter even really knew what happened until somebody came back in the room and informed them. I think they thought that the dog just snapped at me, because as soon as the dog snapped, I grabbed my face like this, and then I wandered to the door, and then I wandered out, and obviously the vet knew I had been bit. I was aware that I had been bit. And I remember in that moment looking at my vet, and I just kind of had this fear, and the fear was that I had lost my nose. I have worked with animals for years, and in that moment I remembered several people who had lost pieces of their nose or their noses due to facial bites, and I did not know in that moment how much of my face was there. So my face basically felt like it was just like the worst pain. It's like the worst pain imaginable. No big deal. I know I'm talking about it really light, but in the moment I was really scared. And so I kind of meandered, stumbled to the back, holding my face. And I remember they said to move your hand. And so I moved my hand, and I will say the stitches, I'm not going to show the picture of what it looked like before, but when I moved my hand, one of my coworkers did projectile vomit at the side of my face. It was that bad. It did go all the way through from up here all the way down, and then it was actually all the way down here on my lip too. So it was like this. Not only that, but that was the bottom part of the jaw that did this damage to me. The actual top canine pierced me up here. And so I had basically a stab wound straight down in my cheek up here, which you can kind of still see. There's sometimes little bumps that will come up just due to the damage that area took. And so I was, very traumatized in the moment. But I have been in a lot of emergency situations, and I keep my cool. And so I remember I turned and I looked, at the vet, and I said, "Is my nose still there?" And she paused for a second, and she was like, "Let's get you cleaned up," because I think that in the moment, with all of the damage, she actually didn't know if any part of my nose got damaged because there was so much. And so I sat there for a while, and I was like, okay, these people are running around like crazy. It felt like 10 minutes. It was probably 45 seconds to a minute. And then they come back, and in the heat of the moment, this was the worst mistake that happened through the entire process. But in the heat of the moment, their first thought was to do what we would do with an animal, because we all work with animals, which is to clean it. And if it was soap and water, it probably would have been fine. However, they used medical grade 100% alcohol and they sprayed it on my face. And so in doing that, they fried all of the nerves that were currently exposed, and I have never got the feeling back. So I can feel my lips. My lips have feeling until the corner right here, and all of this part of my lip has feeling until this scar right here. But the rest of my mouth has feeling. I, however, do not have feeling in this part of my face. I would describe it as like an oval. So up to where the canine pierced down this way towards my nose, and then back down, I don't have any feeling right there. And that was from the alcohol. And so then, to be honest, I was like half out of it. And so I thought they were just going to take me to an urgent care at first. And they were like, no, we're going to the ER. And I was like, okay. So we get to the ER. They call my boyfriend at the time, and he's like freaking out. He starts driving on his way there. And I'm just wanting anybody to be there for me at this point. And so I'm sitting there, I'm waiting, and the moment that I always like to tell people was like comedy was my manager at the time dropped me off at the front door of this building, of the ER. And so I walk in, and I am in these like light blue scrubs, and I look like I just walked off the set of a horror movie. I am covered in blood from here down. Like, it is completely drenched my scrubs. I have it all over my arms. Like, I look insane, okay? So I walk up to the desk of the woman who's sitting there working, and she did one of those, like, you know, like when people are working. So she was sitting there, she was working, I saw her writing and this da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. And then I saw her do this, and then she went, and she looked at me, and of course, at this point, they had cleaned my face. I had gauze all over my face. I was holding it. And she was just like, what's going on with you today? I can't talk, right? Okay? Like, the one question that I had managed to get out this entire time was, is my nose gone? And then I had a question about urgent care I managed to get out in the car, but I can't really talk. And so I was just like, you know, I pointed at my face, and I was like basically gestured that I couldn't talk. And I pointed at the paper, and so she handed me this random piece of paper, and she said, what's wrong? And in the worst handwriting I probably ever wrote in my life, I wrote dog bite. And then she was just like, okay, how bad is it? And of course, my manager wasn't there to like explain anything or talk about anything. And so I just wrote bad, literally like a toddler would. I had my pen like this. I wrote bad, and then I underlined it like 5 times. And she was like, okay. And then, so you know in action movies, I'm gonna probably put a clip in here, but you know in action movies where like everybody's standing in an elevator right before a fight scene, and it's like just like the elevator music playing, and they're just like holding like all their weapons and everything.
What? Guy without his balls. Munich.
Munich is a city in Germany. München, Munich. Yeah.
Right.
That's basically what happened. So she was just like, okay, go take a seat. And so it was just like this empty ER lobby. And I go and I sit down, and it's just like elevator music playing. And in this process, this is a very small ER, okay? And so the people who were over there saw me come in and also heard that it was a dog bite, okay? So I'm sitting there holding the gauze on my face. There's like elevator music playing. It's like complete silence for like 3 minutes, okay? And I'm just sitting there like, this isn't good. And then all of a sudden, this like old man comes up to me, and he just goes, you know, I was bitten by a dog once. And then he just sits down in front of me and starts telling me the story of him getting bit. And I just, yeah, I will never forget that, because I always thought that moment in movies was really funny, and then I got to experience it firsthand, and it was just as funny. So, yeah. And of course, I would try to have a really lighthearted, I was like, if I don't stay calm, I'm gonna lose it. But yeah, I was waiting for my boyfriend at the time to get there. They had like called him, and they had to call him back once I got to the back. But my manager came like rushing in. Bless her heart, she was sprinting. Literally the best manager I've ever had in my life. She comes sprinting in. She like looks at the counter and she goes, "Where is she?" And they like point, and she goes, "Why is she not in the back?" And they go, "Well, we haven't, assessed her." And my manager goes, "Get her back there now." And so I'm really thankful for her for that. But so they immediately they're like, "Oh, okay." And so they come grab me, and my elevator time is over. And they pull me to the back. And of course I still have the gauze over my face, still covered in blood. It's very gross. And so I'm sitting there, and they're like, "Okay, we're gonna have you remove the gauze." And I will never forget the look on whatever assessing nurses' faces. Like, I'm guessing they don't ever get serious problems or like serious injuries into this small hospital. And so I remember her, the same thing like I did with the lady at the counter. She's like taking notes. She's like, "Okay, remove your gauze." She looks down back down at her thing. I remove it. And then she goes, She immediately turns to her coworker, and I don't know what the codes for hospitals are, but whatever the code was, this is bad code. It was like code blue or code green or something. And so then he looks over and goes, "Oh, also." And so of course that's not what you want to see when you're the patient. You don't want people going, or when that's happening, but I was aware that this was bad. And I'm just trying to keep calm. And so they start, he picks up the phone, is like making a phone call. They all start panicking, and they're just like, "Okay, we're gonna put you in a room," and they're like, "And we're gonna get you ready for transport." What do you mean, get me ready for transport? And so I'm sitting there waiting, super confused about what's happening. I'm like, are they transferring me to another hospital? What's going on? And then somebody comes in and is like, "We have a helicopter that we're preparing, and we're gonna airlift you to a larger hospital where they have a plastic surgeon." My heart just drops, and I'm like, okay, it's bad enough that I need like emergency plastic surgery. Okay. So I'm trying to breathe, I'm trying to stay calm, and then she was just like, "Hold on a minute, they're calling me back to whatever." So then she leaves, and like 20 minutes pass. My boyfriend at the time gets there. He looks like he's like gonna lose it. He looks at it, tells me, tries to be like he basically did a like, and of course he was that's not the reaction that he wanted to be giving me, but like that was the reaction he kind of felt like he had to. And so then they rushed me to a different area of the hospital, and then they came in and said that there was a plastic surgeon that worked with the hospital that happened to be somewhere on campus, and they got in contact with her, and she was on her way. And so they literally just like rushed me into this room. It basically looked like a regular hospital room. It was not a surgery room. They put my manager and my boyfriend on the side of this area, and she came in. They put this, they took the largest needle I've ever seen in my life and numbed my entire face. And then they took, I don't even know how many chemicals, and like started doing stuff to like clean and prep the area. And then the plastic surgeon came in, and I will never forget her face as long as I live. She's a fantastic human being. But she came in and she was just like, "Hey, you're gonna be okay. I'm gonna get you fixed up." And so I sat there, and I have absolutely no idea how much time passed, to be honest with you, because I was awake the whole time. My face was numbed, so I could not feel it. However, I did have like nerve sensation things that were happening, and so I kept like jerking a little bit, but I did my best not to. Obviously because she's doing surgery on my face. I mean, I was awake. And so they finished the surgery, and she got me stitched up. By the time everything was done, I think that I had somewhere between 300 and 400 stitches in my face. The majority of which are along this kind of like L shape right here. And that was because it was like all the way through. That was stitching that L shape back together. And then I had stitches up here, and then I had stitches because this lip was all the way cut open and through here, and she had stitched all that back up. Almost all of the stitches were internal stitches, to like put whatever back together. But there was, of course, the majority of stitches in this part of my face. So, yeah. And then it healed. It took several weeks. I obviously got workers' comp. And I'm not even mad at the place that I used to work for that. Stuff like that happens with dogs. If you choose to work with animals, it's gonna happen. Generally, eventually you're gonna get bit. Now, getting bit in the face, no, that's not common. But getting bit is when you do that line of work. And so I just happened to be very unlucky. And I did have some fear with dogs, and I'm not gonna name the breed of dog because I don't want people to think that that type of dog is aggressive in any way, shape, or form. I will say the owners did not express that the dog had bite history, and if they would have done that, even though our computer system failed, if the owners would have communicated that their dog had a history of biting people, that could have saved my face that day. And so the owners did choose not to euthanize the dog. And I think like a year down the road, the dog took off the owner's ear. And the owner had to have plastic surgery themselves. And they did, I think, have to get transported in a helicopter to that whole thing. And after that, they decided that the dog was too dangerous to keep around their children, which the dog was dangerous to keep around their children before it ever even did anything to me. And I don't know why they didn't make the grown-up decision to say, this dog has a bite history and it's attacking people without warning, which is not a safe thing to do. If a dog is attacking without warning, that animal is not safe to be around. And so, yeah. The dog did not continue to live about a year after that because they did choose to euthanize, which was probably the best thing. But yeah, that is the story of my face and why I have this scar. That was kind of a long video. I hope that you enjoyed it. That was just me being like super raw. That is the entire story. That is my actual story, my life. None of that is made up, of how I got this scar. And so, a little lore from Raven to add to your day, and I thought it would be a good story time, and I want to do some more of these because if there is one thing that I have, your girl has lore. And so I thought we would start there because that seemed like easy. I don't want to say fun, but but a fun one. That's a good explanation of something that happened to me. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you later. Bye.